Kwame Mena had always been destined for greatness in basketball. Born and raised in Accra, Ghana, he grew up in a neighborhood where basketball was more than just a game, it was a way out. From a young age, he displayed an extraordinary talent on the court, earning a scholarship to a prestigious sports academy. As a shooting guard, his agility and precision made him a local sensation, with dreams of playing professionally. However, fate had other plans. During a crucial game, he suffered a devastating knee injury that shattered his career before it even began. While the pain of losing his dream was unbearable, Kwame refused to walk away from the sport he loved. Instead, he channeled his passion into coaching. His sharp strategic mind and relentless discipline quickly set him apart, and soon, he became known as one of the most promising young coaches in Ghana. Kwame's growing reputation caught the attention of the Academy, a prestigious private school in Lagos, Nigeria, known for its academic excellence but struggling sports teams. Their basketball team, the Falcon Warriors, had not won a championship in years, and the school board was desperate for a turnaround. They needed someone who could instill discipline, strategy, and a winning mentality into the team. Kwame was their answer. Offering him a lucrative contract and full control over the team, the academy lured him to Lagos. Within 3 years, Kwame transformed the Falcon Warriors into champions, securing multiple state and national titles. His coaching philosophy was simple: hard work, discipline, and absolute focus. His players respected him, feared him, and admired him. He was more than a coach. He was a mentor, a father figure, and the mastermind behind the academy's basketball success. Off the court, Kwame lived what seemed to be a perfect life. His success brought him wealth, admiration, and a lifestyle many envied. He was married to Amina, a brilliant university lecturer, and they had 2 teenage children. To the world, they were the picture of stability and success. However, behind closed doors, cracks in the marriage had begun to form. Kwame's charisma and power made him attractive to many young women, and he had never been one to resist temptation. Though whispers of his affairs occasionally surfaced, his influence and status shielded him from real consequences. He justified his actions, convincing himself that he was in control, that these were harmless indulgences. But deep down, he knew he was playing with fire. Amara Oko was no ordinary schoolgirl. At 18, she possessed a rare combination of beauty, intelligence, and ambition. With her deep brown skin, mesmerizing hazel eyes, and graceful movements, she had a presence that demanded attention. But it wasn't just her looks that made her stand out. It was her confidence, her determination to rise above her circumstances. She dreamed of becoming a professional dancer, using her talent to escape the constraints of her privileged but suffocating life. Amara had been watching Coach Mina for a long time. She had seen how girls at school admired him, how his name carried weight beyond the basketball court. Unlike others who feared or idolized him, she saw something different. An opportunity. Amara understood power, and she knew that if she could get close to Kwame, she could use him to her advantage. She just needed to make the first move. One evening, after practice, Amara found her moment. While other students packed up to leave, she lingered, waiting until Kwame was alone in the gym. With deliberate confidence, she approached him, her voice steady and smooth. "Coach, can I talk to you?" she asked. Kwame, exhausted from a long day, looked up and nodded. She smiled. "I need help with my flexibility, for dancing. Could you show me some stretching techniques?" Her request seemed innocent enough, but there was something in her eyes, something that hinted at more. Kwame hesitated for a brief moment, sensing the underlying tension, yet he found himself nodding. "All right, tomorrow after practice," he agreed. As Amara walked away, a knowing smirk played on her lips. The game had begun, and she was ready to play. The next evening, as the gym emptied out, Amara stayed behind, stretching on the sidelines as she waited for Kwame. He arrived on time, his usual composed demeanor intact, but there was a tension in the air, an unspoken awareness between them. Their first session was strictly professional. Kwame demonstrated various stretching techniques, guiding her movements with a careful distance. But Amara was playing a different game. She leaned in just a little too close, let her fingers brush against his when he adjusted her posture, and held his gaze a second longer than necessary. She was testing the boundaries, seeing how far she could push before he reacted. Kwame, despite his experience with women, found himself unsettled. He told himself he was imagining things, that she was just another student, but deep down, he knew better. There was something electric about Amara, something dangerously intoxicating. That night, as he lay in bed beside his sleeping wife, he couldn't shake the memory of her touch, her scent, the way she had looked at him. Kwame tried to maintain his professionalism, but Amara made it impossible. Their sessions became more frequent, their conversations growing more personal. She confided in him about her dreams of becoming a professional dancer, about feeling trapped under the weight of her parents' expectations. Kwame found himself drawn to her not just physically, but emotionally, something that hadn't happened with his past affairs. One evening, after an intense practice session, Amara pushed the boundaries further. As they finished stretching, she lingered, her body closer than necessary. "Coach," she whispered, her voice laced with temptation. "Are you sure we should stop?" His resolve cracked. He had been strong before, but at that moment, he didn't want to be. When she leaned in, pressing her lips against his, he didn't pull away. The first kiss was the point of no return. From that night on, their relationship escalated at a dangerous pace. They stole moments in the gym, exchanged secret messages, and eventually found secluded hotel rooms where they could be alone. Kwame was obsessed. He had been with other women before, but none had consumed him like Amara. She was fearless, confident, and completely in control, something he had never experienced before. For a while they believed they were untouchable. They were careful, meeting in secret, keeping their affair hidden from prying eyes. But the walls of secrecy began to crack. Students started noticing how often Amara stayed behind after practice. Teammates saw the lingering glances, the way Kwame's mood changed when she was around. The cheerleading squad whispered about Amara's sudden rise in confidence, her mysterious disappearances. And then, there was Chinu Ibe, a jealous classmate who had always competed with Amara. Chinu had admired Kwame from afar, fantasized about being the one he noticed, but he never did. When she borrowed Amara's phone one afternoon, a notification from Coach K caught her attention. Curiosity turned into a burning need for revenge as she scrolled through the messages, explicit texts, intimate promises, and even hotel bookings. Chinu had found the perfect weapon to destroy Amara, and she wasn't going to keep it to herself. Amara and Kwame's relationship had crossed every forbidden boundary, but in their passion and recklessness, they had forgotten one crucial truth: secrets never stay hidden for long. The whispers around the school grew louder. Students began speculating, piecing together the clues that had been in front of them all along. Kwame noticed the shift in the air. He saw how some of his players exchanged knowing glances whenever Amara walked past. He felt the tension among the staff, the way some of his colleagues avoided making eye contact with him. And worst of all, he noticed the way his wife, Abina, had started looking at him differently, watching him with a quiet suspicion that sent a chill down his spine. One afternoon, as he sat in his office, staring at the endless messages Amara had sent him, his assistant coach, Daniel, knocked on the door. Kwame looked up, masking his unease. "Coach, can I talk to you?" Daniel asked, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. Kwame nodded, though his gut told him this conversation would not be a pleasant one. "There's talk going around," Daniel said carefully. "About you and a student." Kwame stiffened. His grip tightened around his phone. "Talk?" he repeated, feigning ignorance. Daniel sighed. "Kwame, I don't want to believe it. But you need to be careful. People are watching. If there's even a grain of truth to these rumors, you have to shut it down before it ruins you." Kwame forced a chuckle. "You know how these kids are, Daniel. They make up stories." But even as he spoke, a part of him knew the damage was already done. The walls were closing in, and he was running out of time. It was Chinu who pulled the trigger. Jealousy had burned inside her for too long, and now she had the perfect weapon. She created an anonymous email account and sent the damning evidence to the school's administration. But she didn't stop there. She forwarded the messages, voice recordings, and even a hotel booking receipt to multiple gossip blogs and social media platforms. By Monday morning, the entire school was in chaos. Kwame arrived at work oblivious to the firestorm that was about to consume him. The moment he stepped onto campus, he felt it. The stares, the hushed whispers, the smirks from students who once revered him. His phone buzzed incessantly, but he ignored it. Then, his office phone rang. "Coach Mina," the principal's voice was cold. "Report to my office, now." Kwame's heart pounded. He barely made it halfway down the hallway before he was intercepted by security guards. They led him down a separate corridor, away from the main offices, and into a private conference room. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The school board members sat around the long table, their expressions grim. The principal, Mr. Gboyega, stood at the head of the room. But it was the sight of his wife, Abina, sitting in the corner, arms crossed, eyes filled with cold fury, that made Kwame's stomach drop. Mr. Gboyega slid a printed document across the table. "Explain this." Kwame picked up the papers with trembling hands. His heart stopped as he saw the evidence laid out before him. Screenshots of his messages with Amara, transcripts of their calls, even blurry photos of them entering a hotel together. There was no denying it. He had been caught. While Kwame faced the wrath of the school board, Amara's world was crumbling in a different way. She sat in the counselor's office, her phone buzzing relentlessly with messages, some cruel, some threatening. Her once loyal friends had turned on her, whispering behind her back. Her mother sat beside her, silently crying, while her father paced the room, his face dark with rage. "You have disgraced this family," Chief Emeka Oko spat. "Do you understand what you've done?" Amara opened her mouth to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. She had always known that her father was a man who valued his reputation above all else, but she had never seen him this angry. "I can fix this," she whispered. "I just need—" "You will do nothing," he cut her off. "From this moment on, you are finished. No more school. No more freedom. You will stay inside this house until I decide what to do with you." Amara's stomach twisted. "Dad, please—" "Enough." His voice boomed. Her mother reached for her hand, but Amara yanked away. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to cry. She had made a mistake, but she wouldn't beg for forgiveness. Not from them. What she didn't know was that her nightmare was just beginning. Kwame's career was over. He was suspended indefinitely, and it was only a matter of time before legal charges were filed against him. But the worst blow came from his wife. Abina had left their home, taking their children with her. She refused to answer his calls, and when she did respond, it was through a lawyer, demanding a divorce. Kwame sat alone in his house, drowning in whiskey, staring at the walls that had once been filled with his family's laughter. The media had turned him into a monster. His name was plastered all over the news, his face splashed across social media with headlines that called him a predator, a disgrace. He was trapped. And in his mind, there was only one person to blame. Amara. It had all started with her. She had seduced him, manipulated him, made him reckless. And now, she was walking away while he lost everything. His hands trembled as he picked up his phone and typed a message. "You ruined my life. Now it's time for me to ruin yours." He hit send. And on the other side of Lagos, Amara's blood ran cold. The scandal had erupted like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Kwame Mena, once a respected figure in Lagos's elite sports community, now found himself at the center of a storm that he could neither control nor escape. His life, his reputation, his career, everything was unraveling at a terrifying speed. The air around him seemed heavier, the walls closing in, suffocating him with the weight of his mistakes. He hadn't stepped outside his house in days. Every time he glanced at his phone, another damning article had surfaced, another news outlet had picked up the story, another wave of online condemnation crashed over him. The public was relentless, branding him a predator, a disgrace, a man who had abused his power for selfish pleasure. And yet, Kwame's rage wasn't directed at himself. He blamed Amara. He blamed the girl who had seduced him, ensnared him in her web of temptation, and then ruined him. He convinced himself that she had set him up, that she had been reckless, careless. If she had just kept their affair a secret, none of this would have happened. The house was eerily silent now. His wife, Abina, had taken their children and left, refusing to answer his desperate calls. His home, once filled with warmth and laughter, had become a ghostly prison. Food lost its taste. Sleep evaded him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the smirking face of Amara, taunting him, reminding him of his downfall. And then came the message. A single, anonymous text. "You ruined my life. Now it's my turn." A cold chill ran down his spine. His fingers tightened around the phone. Who had sent it? Amara. No, she wouldn't dare. Someone else must have been watching. Someone who had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Kwame felt a creeping paranoia settle into his bones. He wasn't safe. The walls weren't just closing in. They were whispering. Watching. Amara Oko sat in her bedroom, staring blankly at the ceiling. The once vibrant, ambitious girl was now a shadow of herself. She had lost everything, her spot on the cheerleading squad, her scholarship dreams, her place in society. The world had turned against her overnight. Her phone had been confiscated, but she had found an old hidden device buried in her closet. It was her only window into the chaos that had erupted around her. Every time she scrolled through social media, her heart clenched. Slut. Whore. Homewrecker. Predator. The words were knives, slicing her apart piece by piece. Some messages were worse, threats, warnings, promises of violence. Strangers wanted to hurt her, to punish her, but nothing cut deeper than the betrayal of her so-called friends. Chinu Ibe, her former childhood friend turned rival, had orchestrated her downfall. She had leaked the messages, exposed the affair, and ensured that Amara's name would forever be tied to scandal and disgrace. Amara wanted to hate her, but a part of her understood. She had always been the golden girl, the one who shined brighter, while Chinu remained in her shadow. And now, Chinu had taken everything from her. Her parents were furious. Her father, Chief Emeka Oko, had disowned her in all but words. He refused to look at her, speak to her. Her mother, Madame Ioma, spent her nights crying, whispering prayers that Amara knew would never be answered. She was a prisoner in her own home, but even within these walls, she felt eyes watching. Someone was following her. She could feel it. Every time she passed by the windows, every time she walked down the hall, there was a presence lingering just out of sight. And then, the power went out. Thunder rumbled in the distance, the sky flashing with lightning. Amara sat upright, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. The house was swallowed in darkness. A single soft creak echoed from the hallway. Someone was inside. The door burst open. Kwame stood in the doorway, his clothes soaked from the rain, his eyes wild with fury. The dim glow of lightning illuminated his face, making him look almost inhuman, a specter of rage and regret. Amara's breath caught in her throat. She scrambled backward, but he moved too fast. In an instant, he was on her, his hands gripping her shoulders, shaking her. "You destroyed me," he hissed, his voice raw, broken. "You took everything from me." Tears welled in Amara's eyes. "I didn't, Kwame, please, I didn't mean—" "Liar," he roared, his grip tightening. Amara's mind raced. She had seen this look before, the desperation, the madness. She knew he wasn't thinking clearly. He was a drowning man, and she was the only thing left to pull down with him. "Let me go," she whispered. "Please." But he didn't. Instead, his hands found their way to her throat. For the first time in her life, Amara Oko felt true terror. She kicked, clawed, gasped for air, but Kwame was stronger. His fingers pressed into her skin, cutting off her breath. She tried to scream, but no sound came. Her vision blurred, her limbs grew weak, and the last thing she saw was Kwame's tear-streaked face before darkness swallowed her whole. The morning light revealed the horror that had unfolded in the Oko household. Amara's lifeless body lay motionless on the floor, her skin bruised, her lips parted in an eternal gasp. The silence was deafening. When the police arrived, they followed the bloody footprints leading away from the scene. The hunt for Kwame Mena had begun. For hours, Lagos buzzed with the news. Reporters swarmed the school, the neighborhood, the very streets that Kwame had once walked with pride. Parents who had once praised him now spat at the mention of his name. It didn't take long to find him. He was discovered in an abandoned warehouse, curled up in the corner like a wounded animal. His clothes were still stained with blood. He didn't resist when the officers handcuffed him. He didn't speak when they led him away. He was already lost, already condemned. At the trial, the world watched as Kwame faced his reckoning. He showed no remorse, no emotion. He simply stared ahead, hollow and broken, as the judge passed the final sentence, death by hanging. In the courtroom, Chief Emeka Oko rose to his feet, his voice trembling with rage. "You thought you could take my daughter and walk away," he spat. "Now you will pay." Kwame closed his eyes. He should have walked away. But it was too late. The discovery of Amara Oko's lifeless body sent shockwaves through Lagos. The once promising dancer, whose ambition knew no bounds, was now reduced to a tragic headline. Her death was not just another scandal, it was a wake-up call for the elite sports community. Whispers turned into outcries, and soon, the streets of Lagos buzzed with conversations about the coach who had fallen from grace in the most horrifying way. Detectives were called to the Oko mansion early in the morning. The house, usually grand and imposing, now felt eerily silent. Amara's mother, Madame Aoma, stood in the living room, her face pale and expressionless. Her husband, Chief Emeka Oko, paced in slow, deliberate movements, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had spent his life protecting his family's reputation, building a legacy that was now forever tainted by scandal and blood. The police officer in charge, Inspector Chibuzo, was a seasoned investigator who had seen many crimes of passion unfold. Yet, there was something about this case that disturbed him on a deeper level. Amara had been strangled in her own bedroom, a place that should have been her sanctuary. The brutality of it, the sheer desperation in the struggle evident from the crime scene, made it clear that Kwame Mena had not acted on impulse. This was calculated. This was revenge. Meanwhile, the news spread like wildfire across social media. Every major blog, newspaper, and television station carried the same haunting headline: "Basketball coach wanted for murder of teen cheerleader." The sports community that once revered Kwame now turned against him. Athletes, coaches, and even his former players spoke out, some admitting they had always suspected him of inappropriate relationships with students but had been too afraid to confront him. His past affairs, the rumors that had once been whispered behind closed doors, were now public knowledge. As for Amara's peers, the reaction was divided. Some mourned her loss, remembering the bright, ambitious girl who had dreamed of fame. Others whispered cruelly that she had brought this upon herself, that she had played with fire and gotten burned. But regardless of opinion, one thing was clear. Lagos had lost its innocence that day. Kwame Mena had vanished. Hours after Amara's body was discovered, a nationwide manhunt was launched. Every police station in Lagos was alerted, his face appeared on every major news outlet, and an official warrant was issued for his arrest. The crime was too high profile to ignore, and the public demanded justice. The first stop for investigators was Kwame's house. It was empty. His wife, Abina, had already moved out with their children following the scandal, and the once lively home now felt abandoned. The bedroom was a mess, drawers pulled open, clothes missing. It was clear that he had left in a hurry. "He's running," Inspector Chibuzo muttered, scanning the room. "But he can't run forever." The police checked hotels, airports, bus stations, anywhere he could have fled. But Kwame was smart. He knew the city too well, and he had connections. Someone was helping him. Meanwhile, journalists were relentless in their pursuit of the truth. A young investigative reporter, Zainab Aliyu, had been following the case closely. She had uncovered details about Kwame's past relationships with students, secret affairs, and his methods of manipulating young girls. She wrote a damning article titled "The Predator in the Locker Room," exposing years of unchecked abuse and institutional negligence. The article sent shockwaves through the school administration. The elite academy in Lagos, once known for its prestigious sports program, now faced public scrutiny. Parents demanded answers. How had they allowed a predator to roam their halls unchecked? Then, the police received a tip. Someone had spotted Kwame near the outskirts of Lagos, hiding in an old warehouse near the docks. A SWAT team was dispatched immediately. Night had fallen when the police stormed the abandoned warehouse. The air was thick with tension as officers moved in, weapons drawn. Flashlights sliced through the darkness, revealing scattered crates, rusted machinery, and the unmistakable scent of damp wood. Then they found him. Kwame sat in the corner, his once proud figure now slouched, his clothes disheveled, his face gaunt from exhaustion. He did not resist. He did not speak. He simply stared ahead, as if he had already accepted his fate. "Kwame Mena, you are under arrest for the murder of Amara Oko," Inspector Chibuzo declared, his voice echoing through the warehouse. The disgraced coach did not protest. As officers cuffed him and led him away, the reality of his situation seemed to sink in. The man who had once been revered as a visionary, a mentor, a leader, was now nothing more than a criminal. News of his capture spread instantly. Crowds gathered outside the police station, some demanding justice, others simply wanting to catch a glimpse of the fallen icon. His former players, the young men who had once admired him, stood in disbelief. This was not the man they had known. Or had they simply ignored the signs all along? Kwame was placed in solitary confinement, awaiting trial. But even behind bars, his name continued to dominate headlines. The trial of Kwame Mena was set to be one of the most watched cases in Lagos history. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed, journalists scribbled furiously, and the air was thick with anticipation. Kwame Mena sat in the defendant's chair, his face emotionless as the charges were read aloud. The prosecution wasted no time painting him as a manipulative predator, a man who had used his power and influence to exploit young girls, and who, when finally exposed, had resorted to murder. Amara's parents sat in the front row, their grief raw and visible. Madam Aoma Oko wept silently, while Chief Emeka sat stone-faced, his gaze locked onto the man who had stolen his daughter's life. When the verdict was finally read, the courtroom fell silent. Guilty. The sentence. Death by hanging. There was no outburst, no dramatic plea for mercy. Kwame simply lowered his head, accepting his fate. The man who had once held the power to shape young athletes' futures now had no control over his own destiny. On the day of his execution, the city held its breath. Crowds gathered outside the prison, some seeking justice, others seeking closure. As the noose was placed around his neck, Kwame Mena whispered his final words. "I should have walked away." And then, it was over.